It always takes a couple seconds to register. Hello, everybody. We should be live. If it shows we're live. Still catching up on my phone. Welcome to Faro Feb with Amanda Bouchet, the lovely Amanda Bouchet, with her. I said that last name correct, right?
Yes, Bouchet, that's right.
Okay. I want to make sure. With her fabulous fantasy series, we're here to interview her. We have Lacey here to help me. We actually read Promise of Fire with our Ravished by Romance book club last year, so we're really excited to have her. And we also have Harriet here real quick to share a little bit about Faro Feb and to introduce you guys to everything. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for hosting this awesome interview with Amanda. I'm really excited to hear all of your awesome questions. Just to give you a little bit of information about Faro Feb, it's a month-long celebration of the fantasy romance genre. This is the second year that we've been doing it. It's grown from last year, so we've got 70 authors involved this month. And we're doing loads of stuff throughout the month. So we're doing author spotlights. We've got a readathon that starts tomorrow. We're doing all of these interviews and we've got panels. There are fun games. There's all kinds of stuff that is going on this month. So we would recommend that you go to the website, www.farofeb.com, where everything is laid out for you there. There's also a TBR that you can check out. There are discount books. We're going to be doing micro stories, original content in the third week. We've just launched an anthology, so if you are looking for more Faro books, then that is the place for you to go. Loads of stuff on the website. So yeah, I'm going to drop off now, as I say, just check out Faro Feb, and thanks to you guys for doing this awesome interview, and I look forward to listening to the rest. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
All right, I'm super excited to have you. Fantasy romance is a genre I absolutely love that I do not read enough of, so I'm excited for this conversation. The first thing I thought we'd get started is Lacey and I can share our favorite book of yours, and you could share your favorite book. I know it's like picking a favorite child, but if you choose one of your favorite books, we'll go ahead and let you start, though. Do you have a favorite book of yours?
Oh, that's a tough one. I love them all. They're all special in their own way. I think my favorite book is always the one I'm working on right now, which is the first spin-off to the Kingmaker Chronicles trilogy. So it's called The Curse of Queens. Mm-hmm. And so the Kingmaker Chronicles trilogy follows Kat and Griffin, and Kat is the narrator throughout all three books. But there's all these, secondary characters. They're core team members that help them achieve their goals, whose stories I wanted to tell, and I set things up for that. And it's been kind of a long time coming, but I'm like 2 weeks from putting book 4, A Curse of Queens, to bed, and that will be the first what I call beta team spinoff, because it was their beta team, their original group of men in arms. Right now I'm kind of in love with that book because it was so fun. It's this big epic journey. It's kind of, I didn't base it on the Odyssey or anything like that, but it kind of has those vibes with a big journey and trials and different sort of adventures along the way and things that the group has to overcome in order to, achieve their end goal. And it brings in lots of fun things sort of from that universe, like sirens, and I don't want to give away too much because that gives sort of, but sort of mythological monsters to fight and trials to endure and overcome, and then a big part on Circe's hidden island. So all these different elements that kind of like Odysseus had to go through on his journey, we kind of find different things that pull on those threads. And that was really fun to do too. Although it has nothing to do with Odysseus otherwise. It's Glenn and Jocasta's journey, and they're out to help the new royals, so who have established themselves but have a little spot of trouble that needs, because of course the queen has been cursed.
And is that a brother's friend romance? I feel like I saw that in the synopsis.
So the main character, Flynn, is Griffin's best friend.
Okay.
And the main female character, Jocasta, is Griffin's sister. So it's actually, it's best friend's little sister or best friend's big brother.
Yes.
And also sort of a second chance at romance type of vibe, because they've known each other for a long time and kind of missed their first chance, and this is a second chance. I'm not usually a big second chance. That's not something I generally read, but then I went ahead and wrote it, so that was kind of interesting too.
Fun. I remember when we were reading book 1, Promise of Fire, we were like, we already felt, the tension between that couple. So we're excited that you're almost done with writing it.
Well, it's written. I'm at the very final editing stage now. It'll be printed in 2 weeks. I'll have finished that up and it'll be ready to go to the advanced reader printing. So yeah, it's really on its last. I'm on my last gasp at being able to change anything. So that's a lot of pressure for me, because I always want to perfect one more thing, But yeah, I've been building up this couple since A Promise of Fire, which was published in 2016. So I probably started writing it a few years before that. So yeah, this couple has been waiting for their chance for a long time. So I think that's typical of authors, though. Whatever book they're working on now is their favorite book. But I mean, of course, I love A Promise of Fire. I love first books too, especially Promise of Fire, Night Chaser, because you get to launch a new couple and a new world and stuff.
Did you know they were going to get a book when you wrote A Promise of Fire?
No, I didn't know what I was doing. By about 3/4 of the way through, I was starting to make plans. But when I just began writing it, no, I was just kind of going with the story and seeing what happened. But once I was about, I'd say 2/3 of the way into the book, I was like, okay, this isn't one book. It's definitely going to be, I didn't even think about 2 books. So it just seemed to me like 3 was the thing. So I'm like, okay, it's too big for one book, so it'll be 3. And as I was writing the secondary characters, things just sort of started developing. But they're the only, Flynn and Jocasta were the only ones where right from the beginning, you knew that there was something. Because I had this, you'll see in the prologue of A Curse of Queens, I had this thing in my mind for them. And so I jumped back in time to that. There's a bit of a prologue. You jump back in time to this moment where Flynn and Jocasta, there was something, but then there wasn't. And then all these years pass. So, and then we jump forward in time to where we are now, right up like 3-4 months, I'd say, after Heart on Fire. So there's not a big gap. It's not like 10 years later or anything. It's basically Promise of Fire, Breath of Fire, Heart on Fire, all right in a row. There's not really any time that passes. It's just one chunk of time. And then A Curse of Queens is like 4 months after that. So we're right back into it. It's like no time has passed, even though in real lifetime, like 5 years has passed.
Before we move on, though, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments so we can get to them too and make sure we get those. Lacey, what is your favorite book from Amanda?
Well, I've only read, well, not only, but I've read 3 of her books so far. These 3. The first 2, Kingmakers, and then Night Chaser. But my favorite so far, I would probably say, is A Promise of Fire, just because, like the whole first book thing, it was really good to just be introduced to this whole new world. And then I love the romance. I love like alpha but fun heroes, and that's exactly what Griffin was. I love the strong secondary characters. It was just a great start to this series.
Thank you.
I agree that A Promise of Fire is my favorite. I actually just read the first in the sci-fi series, Night Chaser, right? That's the title?
Yeah.
Okay, yes. And I love how your romances, I don't know if you do it on purpose, but like they shouldn't be together because like, especially in Night Chaser, like he knows he's supposed to like get her for the bounty. Like he's not supposed to fall in love with her. And then in this one, he literally kidnaps her and he's not supposed to fall in love with her. So I love that kind of tension between the romance. And so I really loved it here. Everybody told me to read it because they're like, they're magically chained together. And I was like, oh, are they? And so that really sold me on this book because he kidnaps her. So yeah.
Yeah, it's fun to to play on tropes like that, you know, the forced proximity or the forbidden love or what. So, I mean, I think in romance we can get tropey, and that's the way it's supposed to be. So
Yeah.
just embrace it.
Do you have a favorite trope to write? Like, is it that trope? Is it a different trope?
Well, I like enemies to lovers because you get that fun tension and fun banter. There, you can have the banter, so it can be funny, but you can have the sizzling tension, the sexual tension too. So Cat and Griffin were enemies to lovers. Tess and Shade were in Night Chaser are a weird mix of enemies to lovers and not, because he knows they're enemies, but she doesn't know they're enemies. So that adds an interesting layer to their relationship, I think. And so writing in Curse of Queens with Flynn and Jocasta was a totally different thing for me, because they're not, there's tension there, but it's more angsty, emotion-y, like thwarted love type tension rather than enemies to lovers. So that was really different, but it was interesting too. I got to be more like, the emotion was really, really deep. But there's probably less opportunity for snide remarks and silly banter and fun, you know, wailing on each other as they pretend to play with swords or whatever. So yeah, enemies to lovers is really fun. I think that's probably a lot of fantasy romance authors' favorite thing. It's just such a great place to start. You know, you have antagonism, you have sparks flying. I think it's probably one of the easier places to start too. It's not to say that we do it to do something easy, because it's never easy to write a whole book or a whole trilogy or whatever. But it's something really to bounce off of, that, you know, with lots of places to go.
Do you also love reading enemies to lovers? Is that your top favorite trope to read?
I don't know, actually. I love enemies to lovers. I love friends to lovers too. I love like fake dating. So that's more contemporary or something. Fake dating, or like the forbidden romance. I'm kind of an equal opportunity reader in those sense. As long as it's well done and you have that tension between the characters, the build up, the sexual tension, I'm happy with sort of whatever is their instigating factor or the relationship going into it. What about you guys? What's your favorites?
Forbidden romance for me, and enemies to lovers. I love both of those because of the tension and the angst. So
yeah, I love angst, which is why I generally go for second chance romance, because there's a lot of, you know, history between the characters. It's like something went wrong and now we have to try to figure out how we can make it work the second time.
Well, Curse of Queens will be perfect for you then.
Yeah, I know. I'm so excited.
Can you read Curse of Queens as a standalone?
You can, yes. Okay. I tried very hard to make that the case. I think that you'll get a lot out of it if you've read the original trilogy.
Yeah.
We're coming in with a big cast of characters, and it's not like they're just dropped out of a void. You know, they have a history already. So it was quite a lot of work to figure that out in a way that's not repetitive for not old readers, but like readers of the original trilogy, but has enough backstory to help new readers know, you know, what's going on and why things are the way they are. So it was a bit of a juggling act, which I think really slowed down my forward progress on writing. But I needed to get that right, because I do want it to be something that a new reader can pick up and super love, enjoy, and feel right in the action and right part of the romance without having to have the background of the original trilogy. But I think it's pretty, you know, evident that you'll get more out of it if you've read the books 1, 2, and 3 ahead of time, because there's so much that happens, and there's this, but they're different characters. Cat and Griffin are there, but they're not the main characters. So that makes it possible. If Cat and Griffin were still the main characters and you're dumped into it, it's not possible. Then it would be like you have to read 1, 2, 3, then 4. But because it's going in with Flynn and Jocasta, and it's their story, and it's a new sort of story arc in the world of Thaleria, it's okay. It can be read as a standalone, in my opinion. And my editor agrees, so that's good. She came back. I was really worried about it. She came back and said, at no point did she feel like a new reader would be left out of the action or lost. So that was a big relief. That was something I was really working hard on. But I mean, of course, I want people to read A Promise of Fire and Breath of Fire and Heart on Fire first, because you'll just, I mean, there's so much there, and it helps, you know, to feel emotionally invested in this new story too, because it's bouncing off of that.
Did you have to do a reread of the trilogy? Did you forget anything? You're like, oh shoot, I forgot I wrote that. Now I have to connect it to book 4.
I didn't do a full reread, but I always had the books next to me for reference, and I'd pop in and out of them. I could find pretty easily, or even just searching on a computer document, like a PDF, a search. Mm-hmm. If I had something in my mind, but I couldn't quite find it, then I found it easily. But no, I didn't reread the whole thing because I didn't want to be influenced by Kat's voice. Kat as a narrator has such a strong voice and such a strong personality. And I didn't want that to somehow sort of ooze onto Jocasta, the new main female lead, because she's her own person, her own character, and really pretty different from Kat. And I didn't want to unconsciously kind of get back in Kat mode, because I was in Kat mode for like 6 years. And since I had a break with that, writing Night Chaser and Starbreaker, I thought it was probably not a good idea to reread the whole trilogy. But I did go back for reference just to make sure I had things right.
Do you just remember everything? Like, fantasy authors, their brains astound me because I can barely remember what I read even in like a contemporary, let alone a fantasy. Can you keep all of that straight pretty easily, especially since you like jumped from one series to then your Night Chaser series and then back to this?
Mostly, yes. I do have notes, but also I wrote the book, then I reread it several times also during the whole editing process. So I mean, that really helps you. There was a time when I could have recited probably the first 5 pages of A Promise of Fire to you. Like, I can't do that anymore. But at the time before I started, you know, querying agents, and I just read it. I think I'll tell you this. I read, after writing it, I reread and reworked A Promise of Fire 16 times before I felt comfortable sending it out into the world. Afterwards, I didn't have that time because it sold on a 3-book deal and I'd only written the first. So then it was like, okay, let's have book 2 and book 3. And I was So that was a real shock for me to not be able to reread my own book 16 times before anyone else saw it. But it's, you know, 2 or 3 times. And then there's the editorial process, which is another 2 or 3 reads after that. So I think, yeah, you just know your book so well. That said, you know, 20 years from now, no, I'm not going to remember. I'll have to reread everything.
Do you ever get things mixed up though between the series? Because I know you recently wrote the 2 and the other series. Or do you ever think like, oh, I want to write about this character? Like, oh wait, no, that's the wrong. Or it's
no.
Okay.
The worlds are totally different. One, the Kingmaker stuff is in like an ancient Greek feeling world, and the Night Chaser stuff, I don't actually call it sci-fi because I don't think that's really representative of it, because for me it's more science fantasy. It's I mean, I'm not a scientist, so I don't pretend to know everything there is to know about all the technological stuff. And me personally, I wasn't interested in writing like an alien story or anything. So it's us with a sort of a magic-y feel in some ways in a futuristic setting. So for me, it's sort of like a futuristic fantasy. It's more along the lines of a Star Wars, sort of with, you have the big heroic battles and the band of brothers and the people coming together to achieve some great goal in sort of this fantasy world that has a magical element to it, rather than a Star Trek, for example, which isn't at all what I was writing. So I tend to call it science fantasy. And no, for me, I don't confuse the two. But it's going to be a bit of a challenge now to jump back to the final book in the Night Chaser series. I don't do well toggling between things. I'm pretty one track. I'm kind of linear that way, but it's going to have to happen. So,
Is that coming out next year then, the book 3?
You know, I am not exactly certain what's going to happen with that. My intention right now is to write that next. I have, like I said, 2 weeks to finish up Curse of Queens. Then I have to take care of all the stuff that I've been ignoring for like 3 months so I could finish this book. So that'll take me a good week. And then I have to start writing a new book. And my intention is for it to be Dawnmaker. But I have not heard back from my editor about what she wants from me next. So, but I think right now I feel like I will fight for that. But I also want to continue the Kingmaker stuff because now I'm on a roll with that. So it's kind of hard. I wish I could clone myself and have one person writing, one Amanda writing Dawnmaker, and one Amanda writing book 5 Kingmaker, which I know who the couple is and I know where it's set, but I don't have a title yet. So we'll call it book 5.
Are there more in the Kingmakers coming then? So there's 5.
Well, there's nothing currently under contract, but I am not too worried about there being another one. And even if there wasn't a contract for some reason, that I would write it. That's totally possible too. But I think that my publisher is pretty happy with how Kingmaker's going. So I don't think that's an issue. But again, I said to my editor, what should I do next? Dawnmaker? And she said, I'll get back to you in a week. And that was like 10 days ago. So I'm not too worried. There'll be something.
Do you like writing, I've noted, like in series, or are you ever going to write like just a complete standalone full-length novel? Because I think, do you have standalone novellas, right?
I do.
Okay.
Well, I have one standalone novella, A Curse for Spring, which is totally unrelated to any other series of mine. So actually it's a really, for people who might be new to me and interested in dabbling in my style or my voice without committing to a huge series first, then A Curse for Spring, it's like, it takes, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours to read, and it's a novella. It's not very expensive. So, and it's unrelated to other series. So that's a good sort of starting point, because it gives I think it represents, the story is totally different from my other ones, but it represents my voice, you know, and the way I write and the kind of things I write. So, and then I wrote a novella for one of Griffin's brothers. So it's a Kingmaker spinoff also, but because it was a novella, I could self-publish it. And that's currently in an anthology with Dorinda Jones, Jeffy Kennedy, and Grace Draven. But I think at some point this summer, I'll publish it individually too. So that'll be another thing. But that is definitely, it can be read as a standalone. Reviewers seem to feel, from what I've seen, that you can read it without having to have the background of the rest of the trilogy. But that's sort of like Kingmaker 3.5. And then as for your question, I don't know, a full-length standalone? Do you mean unrelated, like in a world? Like if I decided to do a paranormal in a town somewhere or something? Like I think I would always want to continue it. If I spend the time building up the universe, I'd want to stay in it for at least 3 or 4 or 5 books if I had the material and it was successful. I mean, obviously, if it tanked or something, I'd move on to something else.
Yeah, I mean, that's the nice thing about fantasy. That's the nice thing about fantasy. It's just like you created this whole new world, and then you always want more of it. Did you always know you wanted to write fantasy romance?
No, I started out dabbling in paranormal stuff like time travel or witches. Things like that were what I wanted to write first off. And then I read Poison Study by Maria V. Snyder. And I said, I want to do that. And so I started out, I was thinking of an idea for fantasy world, a heroine, her magical powers, why she's special, why is she on the run, etc. And that was Kat. But the thing was, I'm a huge romance reader, and I have been for many, many years. And so when I got Kat and Griffin on the page, I was like, sparks are flying. This is a full-blown romance.
Yeah, it has to be adult.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know. I go for the adult stuff. I think I could possibly write a YA if I really put my mind to it, but once the hero and the heroine are on the page, I want them to get together. And I like steamy romance, and I like seeing it on the page. You know, I don't know where you'd put my books on a spice level. I think it's sort of like a 3 out of 5 in general, maybe. So, you know, not at the top of the spice level, but definitely not at the bottom either, you know, nice in the middle. So even though I adore the Poison Study books, they're more what I think of as a fantasy with romantic elements. Whereas my books ended up being a fantasy romance, which I think of as it's 50-50. It's a good split of both elements being as important as each element being as important as the other to the overall story and characters and everything.
Do you have other fantasy romance authors that you read or love?
Yes. Well, the ladies I'm in this anthology with that just came out before Christmas, Dorinda Jones and Jeffy Kennedy and Grace Draven are some of my absolute favorites. Jennifer Estep, if you haven't read her Kill the Queen, it's Crown of Shards is the series, but Kill the Queen is the first book. That's really, really fun too. Maria V. Snyder, although I always want more romance from her. Like, I just love the stories and the characters, but I always want a little more heat, you know? But she's wonderful. I love her. And actually, she has sort of a mature YA science fantasy, I would say, also sort of science fiction-y, futuristic, but more on a fantasy vibe. Let me think of the name of the series. I think it's Sentinels of the Galaxy is the series name, and Navigating the Stars is the first book. And it's a 3-book complete series, and it is delicious. I absolutely love it. It's my favorite read as a series since Harry Potter.
Oh, wow. High praise.
highly recommend. So Navigating the Stars. Again, I think readers tend to shy away from anything they think is sci-fi or futuristic. And really, for me and for Maria V. Snyder's series there, for me, it's fantasy. It's just that people are used to thinking of fantasy as a medieval or ancient type feeling world, when really you've got your Star Wars and everything also sort of a futuristic or other setting. But so yeah, let's see who else. Nalini Singh is great. Jennifer
I love her.
Actually, my favorite series today of Jennifer Armentrout is her Covenant series, which also has elements of Greek mythology, like mine. I don't know have you read the Covenant series?
Yes.
Well, Aiden is my forever book boyfriend. I don't care if I'm like 20 years older than he is. He's my forever book boyfriend.
Yeah, I think the Covenant series was the first series I ever read from her. So it was a while ago, but I really liked it. I love Dorinda Jones too. Nalini Singh, like the classic paranormal urban fantasy authors. They're so good.
Oh yeah, and they produce just different things too. I actually haven't read Dorinda's new series with I've only read the Charlie Davidson series.
Oh yeah, me too.
But I think it's great that they're able to jump between different things as well. So, which I hope to do. I mean, I did, I guess, between Kingmaker and Night Chaser. But I think it's nice to stay fresh. But readers don't always follow, which can be a little demoralizing, you know.
Is there a specific genre that you'd like to try writing?
Well, I do have an idea for a paranormal romance series. So it wouldn't be so paranormal being like set in our own worlds, but with magical elements and creatures like vampires or demons or whatever. But I have a plan, but who knows when I'll get to it.
Well, we love paranormal.
The trend will be past and nobody will want that anymore.
It's always gonna be in.
Vampires are always in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I mean, vampires have been going strong for many years. I don't see them, dying off, no pun intended, anytime soon. So yeah, I have an idea for that. But otherwise, I think I'll always stick with something that's where I can make up a lot of stuff. I don't like I would never, even though I love it, some of my favorite things to read are historical romances like Julia Quinn, Eloisa James, Lisa Kleypas, but I don't want to be confined to actually being realistic historically. So I wouldn't mind writing sort of like an alternate type historical thing, which leaves me free to sort of make up stuff.
Well, speaking of Lisa Kleypas, I was
Okay,
wearing
Lacey,
my...
have you heard of we love romances.
Yeah, we made up these shirts with all of our favorites, historical romance authors. Lisa Kleypas is my favorite.
Oh, I love her stuff. That's my happy place. I think if you've heard me speak anytime other times on interviews, I always say historical romance is my happy place. Like even more so than a fantasy romance, for example, which I mean, I want people to read and write, and I want it to be huge in the world because that's what I do. But if I'm looking for something to just make me happy or feel that frothy feeling of, you know, joy when you're reading, it's historical romance. And my favorite is the first in the Wallflower series. I think it happened one summer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I've reread that. It's one of the only books I
don't
don't
know.
reread.
That's book 2. The Secrets of a Summer Night is book 1.
Yeah.
Ah, that's the one. It's the one. It's book 1. Secrets of a Summer Night. It's book 1. That's my favorite. And it's one of the only books I've reread multiple times. And I always get that like that little heart pinch clenched feeling at different moments. And I love it. So
that's surprising though, because book 3 in that series is normally everyone's favorite. So
yeah.
Devil
Is
in
book
Winter
3 the one Devil in Winter?
Yeah.
Isn't that book 4?
That's book 3.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay.
Spring is book
the
4.
youngest sister, Daisy, that's in book 4, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So there was, now I'm having trouble remembering the names. So who's the heroine in book 1? Annabelle?
Yes.
Annabelle. Then there's
Lillian.
And then Evie.
And then Daisy. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I would have to say books 1 and 2.
I love book 2 too.
Were my favorite. Yeah, but book 1. And you know, it's a funny story because I had read romance when I was in high school, a little less in college. I think I was just too busy reading all the assigned reading. And then I moved to France, and I guess I kind of forgot about it for a while. It was pre-Kindle. Books are super expensive. Imported books, you know, instead of for a paperback, I'd be paying like 15 euros or something. So, and one day I was walking by Shakespeare and Company bookstore, which is right across from Notre Dame. And I saw on a used book bin or whatever, Secrets of a Summer Night, the first one. Yeah. And I picked it up. It was in terrible condition. And it was €1. And I was like, I'm going to read this. And I actually don't love now as an author. I don't buy used books because I feel so bad. I'm like the author. I mean, maybe somebody bought it at some point, but the author doesn't, get anything for that. So I don't personally buy used books anymore. And I rarely did to begin with. But that was my entry back into romance reading after sort of the college years and the beginning years in France. And I picked that and I read that thing. And then after that, I didn't care how much the books cost. I bought everything that was Lisa Kleypas, Eloisa James, Julia Quinn in the English speaking bookstores. And I would go back like every 2 weeks to see what was new, had come in and everything. I must have been one of their best customers.
I feel like though there's so many elements similar between historical romance and fantasy romance because they have some of the same like conventions and like I think is there I love to call it the only one horse trope where they like have to ride on a horse together and that's always in historicals and it's always in fantasy and I love how there's that overlap of tropes between them.
Well, there is because they're tied together with a magic rope.
Right. So they have to be on the horse together. Yeah,
only one horse.
yeah.
And even worse, it's like only one bedroll, even though there's no there's no unsolicited touching, but very proximity. So
and there's
absolutely. I think there's a whole world building involved too. It's just that can be based on an actual world, although it isn't fantasy too. I mean, I based mine on ancient Greece. So
And I know, so you're in France, right?
Mm.
And we have a couple people here from different countries, which I think is super fun because this is actually earlier in the day when everyone's awake. We normally have our live shows at like 8 o'clock at night, so you guys are all asleep. What languages are your books available in? Because I think I saw on your Instagram it's published in French now.
Yes, all right. So Promise of Fire, this one is coming out in French translation on February 9th. So in 3 days.
Yeah. Like, what day is
so
it
that's really exciting. And book 2, Breath of Fire. I've got my books here, but Breath of Fire is coming out. I mean, it'll be a different cover and it's translated to French. And that's in August. And then Heart on Fire in French, I believe, is early next year. And all 3 are already available in German. That's been out and about in the world for a while. All 3 are translated. And that's it. I would love more. If anyone watching this is from, and of course there's the UK versions. So UK, Australia, and New Zealand, they have different covers.
Yes.
But there's no translation necessary. They have their own covers for their own market. And aren't these just
those are so pretty.
Those are pretty, yeah.
Absolutely gorgeous. And then interestingly, before Curse of Queens comes out, because we're moving to a trade paperback format size instead of the mass market size.
Yeah.
So all 3 books are being reissued with absolutely stunning new covers in trade paperback. And so Promise of Fire is April. Then there's May for Breath of Fire and June for Heart on Fire. So April, May, June, all 3 of these are coming out in absolutely gorgeous new covers with trade paperback format, a map, bonus materials, extra scenes, a glossary, artwork of Cat and Griffin. Also, that's so exciting. It's fantastic. And so it's April, May, June, and then October, 4th of October for A Curse of Queens. And those covers all go together as well, and they're really stunning. The artist.
Have you already revealed the covers?
I don't have them here because I don't actually have a physical copy, but they are already up and about on, if you look on my Instagram or whatever, you can see the new covers. Okay. And on Amazon, you can pre-order them. You have to search for the trade paperback format if it's not what pops up first, because the mass market is still sort of, the one in circulation. Mm-hmm. But if you search for other formats in the trade paperback, they're all available. And A Curse of Queens is also available for pre-order. So there's my little plug.
That makes me so happy though, because a lot of times they change like a later book of the series, like cover design or size, and they never go back and like make the first match.
Yeah,
and that's
absolutely
the most annoying thing as a reader. So that makes me very excited.
Well, I asked for it. I said,
thank you.
I was lucky to have gotten what I wanted, so I very much appreciate that. But yeah, it was. I said, wouldn't it be cool? And they said yes. So I said, yay.
And I personally love mass markets, but I know there are readers who don't love mass markets. So I think that people will appreciate the trade size too.
I think so. And for me personally, it's a little small to read. I have trouble seeing. So, I mean, I don't have trouble overall seeing, and I have a pair of glasses, which help, but it's a little small. So I like the bigger format too. And then of course the ebook, I think they'll just transfer all the new content into the ebook. And I'm not sure what will happen with pricing, but I don't think it'll be too much more. I have the cat scratching down here. I have this exercise. It was a yoga mat for me, and now it's got holes in it, and the cats are like, so now it's a cat toy.
Yeah, my dog loves the yoga mat for some reason. He'll just like sit and sleep on it if it's ever out.
Well, they use it like a tunnel. Cats love tunnels, and it's sort of rolled up, and they knock it over, and then go inside it's like a tunnel, and then they scratch at it. So, which is the noise you might be hearing.
There's I don't know if you know these covers, the Night Chaser and the
those are the UK covers.
Okay, I was like, these are so pretty, and I do not remember ever seeing them before. Okay,
I know.
Oh, you have them.
I do. These are this is. I'm trying to get the camera in the right. There we go. This is Starbreaker. That's book 2. And Night Chaser is
Love
the
that.
first one.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
these
Is
covers
that
are just
trade?
stunning. And this, I think, reflects more of the science fantasy element I was talking about than the US covers, which look a little more sci-fi maybe. So, and also you see the difference in format. See, these are not the same size either. Can't get this right because the camera's over there we go.
Yep.
Yeah, I love my UK publisher. It's Piatkus, and they do just the most gorgeous covers too. So that one is just, when I saw that, I remember just getting chills.
Oh my gosh. I just like do you get to see, I just forgotten, it came back to me. Do you get to see like the process of cover designs? Like, do you get any say in what your covers are, or is that just completely publishers do it and say, here you go?
For foreign editions, even the UK, no, it's pretty much just presented to me after the fact. If I really wanted to make a big stink about something, I probably could, but I'm not sure I want to be that person. The US covers, the publisher asks me for quite a long document with elements of the world, the characters, so what the characters look like physically, what their clothing might look like, weapons, what the world feels and looks like, kind of an ambiance type thing, notable scenes or objects from the books, and then things go on behind the scenes. So I send that, and to what extent it's listened to or represents my vision is kind of a toss-up. Like, for example, our original cat, I mean, I know we're changing covers, but I love her. I think she represents the character wonderfully, and she really looks like what I envisioned. So that came out, so that works well. I in no way feel that this character represents Tess. So
oh no.
and I fought to get a new cover model, and I only 10% feel that this one represents Tess better. So I don't know. Yeah. And it wasn't easy to go to bat over that, and it didn't really end up, I didn't really end up getting what I wanted. So so let's not judge a book by its cover. If possible, except for when it's gorgeous, then go ahead, buy it based on the cover.
Yes. It's okay. I feel like publishers don't really listen to readers either. They just do what they think sells, and you're like, okay, I guess that's okay.
Yeah, it can be hit and miss. Like, I have been blessed and lucky, and I have also been not quite as lucky as I hoped for. But you know, as long as hopefully it's more positive than negative, which it is so far. So we'll go with that.
Is your book 3 in your sci-fi series going to be in trade? Do you think they would do that?
I don't know. I don't think that the series has not been as successful as Kingmaker overall. I think because of the futuristic element. So I don't know if the publisher would go get behind something like that. But the question hasn't come up yet. I think it's a good question to ask, but I'm not confident of the answer.
Do you think because of the alien romances are really popular right now, do you think there's been a surge in, or like more of an interest in sci-fi / fantasy now?
You know, I would think so. But the thing is, that's not what I wrote. I didn't write a big blue alien chasing down his fated mate. That's great if the people write it, and it's great if people read it. I'm all for reading anything people want. But that's not what I wrote. It's human beings in a futuristic setting. I always describe it as like a Robin Hood meets Star Wars type thing, because you've got your band of outlaw thieves who are stealing from the rich to help the poor, basically, and then you've got your big evil entity who they're trying, they're the little guy, the underdog fighting for a better world when you've got this big over entity that's, selfish and destructive and violent. So it's my Star Wars meets Robin Hood book. And I was sure that, because I would that would be something I would absolutely gobble up in film or books. And I was surprised at kind of instead of making a big splash, it was kind of a ripple. And it was also just at the time when the final Star Wars trilogy was popular and coming out. It was sort of in between the second and third episodes of that final saga. So I thought it fit in perfectly, but I don't know. So I would love it if more people gave it a shot, because I think they'd find my voice and my type of romance and fantasy elements and enjoy it. But the market seems way smaller, unfortunately, for this kind of thing, unless it's the alien sexy romance aliens and whatever, which is doing wonderfully. So I don't know. I think I didn't write that, and I didn't write another classic fantasy either. So I'm kind of somewhere with that series on this. It's on its own road, we'll say.
Mm-hmm.
It's following its own path. Although I think that Jesse Mihalik is doing a similar type of vibe. It's not alien stuff. It's more space opera, futuristic romance, action, adventure, which is what I did. And her books seem to be doing well. So hopefully we can kind of build each other up maybe. But I'm not sure who else is out there doing something similar.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there are people, but I haven't found it yet. Maybe you guys know.
Well, Ruby Dixon does have a lot more besides just the alien stuff. She does have a couple more like human, but still sci-fi
Mm-hmm.
sort of romances.
It's yeah. The Stairs series. I don't know.
And I haven't read her books yet, but I think Michelle Denier does something in that line also. She has a book called Dark Horse, which I have had on my Kindle for a long time, and I think it's sort of on those similar lines too. I think maybe there's things like that, Night Chaser and Starbreaker and these books we're talking about are out there, but they get less attention. It's sort of, you don't see it on TikTok or whatever. So so it doesn't have that snowball effect that is then, creating this big phenomenon, which is fantastic for anyone that happens for. I think that's great. So it would be nice to have something like that happen. But I think that, I'm ecstatic with the Kingmaker stuff and how people have gotten behind that. And I would love it if more people gave Night Chaser a try, because I think they just find what they're looking for. If they like Kingmaker, they're going to like Night Chaser, in my opinion.
And I don't know if you listen to audiobooks, but I listened to the audiobook of Night Chaser, and it was really good. So I'm excited to read the second one.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I have listened to most of the audiobook of Night Chaser, and I thought it was really well done. Mm-hmm. And I also, I haven't listened to the audiobook of Starbreaker yet, but I know that they added a male narrator. So it's, so it's a dual narration, I think it's the way they call it. I think it's the same woman, and then they added a man to do Shade's voice. So I think that's really cool.
Oh, like his dialogue?
I think the audiobooks are really well done.
So he does the dialogue for the hero, or like whole chapters?
Like I said, I listened to Night Chaser, but I've not listened to Starbreaker on audio. I just know that it's the dual narration. I'm a little standoffish about listening to my own books, because they're so clear in my head, like what people sound like and everything. And if it doesn't match up, it's not that it's necessarily bad, but it doesn't match my vision. So I prefer maybe to sort of.
Do you ever give the narrators notes about the characters and their voices or accents?
Nobody asked me for anything about Kingmaker, which is kind of unfortunate. But Night Chaser, yes, I had discussions with the person in charge of them, not the narrator. I'm sure the information was then passed to the narrator, but no, on different pronunciations and Yeah, I guess it's mostly a pronunciation thing. It's funny. One thing I do know about the audiobook on Kingmaker is that for some reason the narrator pronounced Cato's name Cato. No, I don't know why. And ever since then, I couldn't listen to the rest of it. So.
That's so odd. I know that happened with do you know J.R. Ward's Black Dagger Brotherhood series?
Mm-hmm.
For a while, the narrator was pronouncing things wrong, and no one no one asked J.R. Ward. Like there was no communication about that. And then like halfway through the series, he changed how he pronounced things. So someone finally said like, no, that's not how you do it. So you'd think they'd want to know from the get-go.
I was too inexperienced. It was my first book, and I didn't know that I mean, nobody came to me with a question,
Right,
and I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, if somebody had come to me with a question, I would have responded, but I didn't know to go there. But with A Curse of Queens, I think that I will ask for that, and we can maybe going forward pronounce Cato, for example. And then there's some Greek words in it too that, I mean, I have no idea what the narrator did with them. So for Curse of Queens, maybe I can have a little, powwow with whoever's in charge and try and straighten some of the things out. But I've heard overall people seem to like the audiobooks.
Mm-hmm.
So
are they usually released at the same time, your paperback and your audio?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I don't know anything about Curse of Queens right now, but I think between now and October there'll be something.
Okay. I think that's pretty normal though for traditionally publishing, right?
Yeah. So far in all my traditionally published books, the audiobook has come out the same day as the paperback and the Kindle. So I'm just going based on that. I think it'll be the same.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever want your books to be made into movies or TV shows?
God, actually, I think I'd rather a TV series than
Okay.
I mean, I'd love anything. Don't get me wrong, but I think they just do such amazing things on television with book series now. Well, gosh, there's been so many now. Just recently, I watched The 100. I know that was based on book series. There's Outlander, which is a huge success. I mean, there's just so many. And I think it's really cool to have that length of time to develop things. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to stick to I guess you stick to the main beats of the story, but you can fill it with so much more. You can add adventures and, it doesn't have to, if it's a movie, okay, it just follows the story and then that's it, I think. But with this TV show, you have this opportunity to create a whole universe around it. And I think that would be really cool. So you get from point, A to point Z eventually, but you can do all sorts of stuff that's not actually in the books in the meantime. But as long as you remain faithful to the spirit of the books and the characters and the world and everything, I think it's cool when they kind of diverge off and create this whole universe around it.
Yeah, that would be super fun for Kingmakers, like the magic, CGI. That'd be really fun to watch.
Can you imagine like a dragon?
Yeah.
I actually think it would be very cool for Night Chaser too. I think that would lend itself really well to television.
I'm surprised they haven't tapped into the fantasy romance market, because they've done the high fantasy, because we have Witcher, Game of Thrones, Wheel of Time, but they haven't really gone for fantasy romance, which has a huge market in the book world.
Yeah. And people always love the romance anyway in those high fantasies.
Game of Thrones, everyone's
obsessed. I think that's what people are there for. They're not there for the rolling heads and stuff.
And Henry Cavill, so
right?
I absolutely agree, and I would love that. Sorry, what?
No, go ahead.
No, that was it. I would love that, but I think that's everybody's dream. It only happens for a small, tiny percent. We'll see that. I mean, it doesn't look at Outlander, for example. I mean, didn't 30 years go by between the first book coming out and actually getting so you never know. I won't give up hope.
Yeah, we'll see you in 30 years.
Oh my gosh, I hope if it does happen, I hope it's faster than that. But even so,
yeah,
that'd be awesome.
Yeah. You had mentioned that like if they didn't buy the third in the Night Chaser series, you'd write it. Do you have any plans of ever self-publishing anything other than the novellas that you've done?
Yeah, that paranormal idea I was talking about, I would want to try and self-publish that, I think, because I want to try my hand at that. I want to figure the ins and outs of it out so that I know that I have that as an option. I mean, I've done it with a novella, and I'll do it with another novella soon. But I think my goal at this point is, if possible, to be a hybrid author and have a foot in both worlds. And I think that would be ideal for me, because I do enjoy having a publisher and that support. But I also think that it would be time for me to branch out a little bit and try something on my own. So. But for the moment, my priority is finishing the Night Chaser series and then continuing with my Kingmaker spinoffs. So I suppose if the publisher didn't want those, then I'd have the opportunity to do them myself even faster, or something myself faster. But assuming those continue in the traditional vein, then I don't know when I'm not a very fast writer, so juggling a bunch of projects at once is the only thing. Is when you send in a book, like sometimes it's 2 months before it comes back to you. So there is that time where I could maybe, launch into new projects, but then the book comes back to you and then you have to stop. It's this game of stopping and starting. Even when I was writing, even when it's in one series, you send off one, you start the other one, and then the first one comes back to you, you have to stop it and go back to on that. And it's one of those facts of publishing. And I think I could avoid that with self-publishing, because you don't have the wait between things.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be nice for me, because I like to just do sort of one big project at a time, put it to bed, and move on to the next thing.
That would be hard. You said you're like 2 weeks out from finishing like the final round of edits on the Kingmaker book. Do you do anything to like celebrate being done with the book, or like publishing a book? Anything special?
Well, celebrating being done with it will probably be a glass of wine. Going out with my boyfriend, maybe. But no, for me, the big celebration will be release day, I think. And hopefully it'll just, it can be, I don't envision like inviting a bunch of friends over and having a big book launch party or anything, but, marking the day with something special would be good.
Do you have any plans for any signings? I think I met you once before,
I do.
actually.
A ton this year, actually.
I totally forgot.
Maybe, I don't know.
What
it was at a Polycon, right? Like you went to a Polycon
you
before.
Both be there? No, we
I
met
got
at
it.
a Polycon.
Yes.
Go to a Polycon this summer?
I'm going this summer, yeah.
Oh, we'll be there.
Oh,
yeah,
awesome.
We'll be there.
Yeah. That must have been before
I still have to buy my plane tickets, but otherwise, that's all set. So I have 2 rare signings this spring. Rare is romance.
Oh yeah.
Author reader events. And
rare.
Sorry.
One in Scotland.
Yeah. So there's one in Paris, so that's really easy for me and really nice. So that's April 2nd, I think. So Rare Paris, and then Rare Edinburgh is at the end of May. Are either of you going to that one?
Oh, I wish.
No, I wish.
So the plan is Paris, then Edinburgh in May, and then a Polycon at the end of July.
Oh, okay.
So I have 3 signings, and luckily for a Polycon, those new Kingmaker editions, the trade paperbacks, will all be out.
Oh,
yeah,
perfect
April,
timing.
May, June.
Okay.
So it'll be exciting to see those, arrive in the hands of readers.
Yeah. We love them.
Beyond that, I don't have plans, but
yeah. It's been like, what, 3 years?
Yeah, since the last Polycon.
Is that the one I was at where we met?
I think it was Florida. So
no.
Oh no, was it Florida? I don't remember.
No, it was DC.
Oh, then Jessica, you would have been there.
Yeah, but I hadn't read her book.
Oh. I didn't either.
Right?
I just had your book, so I was excited to get it signed.
Oh, maybe it was in one of the swag bags or something.
Yeah, maybe.
Ah, and so you got it signed, and then a couple years later,
Yeah.
you read it. I mean,
Really
I
got around
never
to it.
know. People get the book in a swag bag. Are they ever going to read it or not? I don't know. So I'm glad you did. Thank you.
Any last minute questions? We are coming up on an hour. These always go by so fast whenever we're talking. Any
Can
last
you
minute questions?
remind us when Curse of Queens is releasing?
Yes, it's October 4th.
Okay, still a while away.
Yeah, it's at the moment you always have to have it ready in advance because the advanced reader copies, but there's been printer delays and shipping delays, and in the book world it's kind of a big deal. So I think they're trying to get it done even earlier, which kind of cut my time down a little bit. I'm a little frantic at the moment, but
Yeah.
so
Well, it's only February, so like the publishing world just takes so long because you're turning it in soon, but then it's not coming out until October.
yeah, isn't that crazy? I turn it in mid-February and readers don't get it till October. But hopefully it'll give me time to get started on something else.
Yeah, and everybody can catch up on the first three.
That's right.
True.
I think, well, you guys still need to read at least book 3, I think, Lacey,
Yes.
right? And
Yeah.
Finish them.
you've read all of them, Jessica?
No, I've only read book 1, so I have to read
Book
the
1.
next.
So now you have 2 together.
I know.
I hope you like them.
I think I will. I absolutely love the first one, so
Oh, thank you.
yeah. And I want to make sure I got your other series, at least the first book, read before talking to you. So, because I usually don't pick up sci-fi, but I read it and I really, really liked it. So,
Oh, I'm so glad.
yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I really love that book. It's actually, you asked what my favorite book is. And like I said, it's the book where you're working on now, but I think this might be the book of my heart. I prefer to show this cover. I chase her on this.
Yeah.
I think I love Tess and Shade together. I love their relationship. It was I thought it was mature in some, not in all ways, but it was kind of a mature relationship. And I love Tess's dedication, and I love how Shade was kind of coming into it morally gray, but then picks a side and he's all in, and I really love them as a couple. Yeah, I adore that. And I liked, and Starbreaker book 2, I loved sort of solidifying their relationship and bringing them, to the point where they're at, where they can be this super team, and understand each other. So I really love them. I hope people give Night Chaser and Starbreaker a try, and Dawnmaker will arrive at some point.
All right. Well, I'm super excited for book 4. Amanda's Instagram's linked down below. Everybody make sure you check out Faro Feb. Their their website is down below, and that readathon starts tomorrow, which is super exciting. And that's everything. Thank you, Amanda, for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Nice speaking with you.
Oh,
Yeah.
you too. And I hope I'll see you at a Polycon this summer then.
Definitely, yes. Because I need to get my book signed because they're not signed.
Well, I'll be waiting for you then.
Yes. Okay. Bye, everybody. Thank you for joining.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you.